Hello, and welcome to the Livestream Happy Hour. My name is Eric Brayman. I am the Program Director with Lane Arts Council and your host for today's Livestream Happy Hour. And I am so excited to actually welcome somebody who helped me in my very beginning days at Lane Arts Council get into this team and be able to learn the world of arts education and so much more. Lauren Suveges. Lauren, hello.
Hello. Hi, Eric. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
We're so excited to have you here. So, Lauren, you're an art teacher out in Siuslaw School District. Is that right?
That's right. Out on the beautiful Florence, Oregon coast. So, loving it out here at Siuslaw Middle School.
I love it. Well, we're going to get into a little bit more to learn about kind of the world that you are experienced there in arts education and hear a little bit more about your personal artistry as well along the way. But before we jump into it, I will welcome you all officially to the Livestream Happy Hour. The Livestream Happy Hour started at the very beginning of the pandemic when we were losing all those opportunities to engage in person. And while we are being able to return back to in-person programming here and far beyond the Eugene and Wayne County community, there is still this opportunity for us to be able to connect with one another through this digital platform. And so we're keeping these going as an opportunity for us to introduce you to new arts leaders and artists in our community, as well as allow them to connect with you all over Wayne County and beyond. So thank you for tuning in. This is also a great opportunity to remind you of the value of arts education in our community, as well as arts organizations. So we encourage you to please go make a donation to any arts organization or arts education nonprofit that you believe deeply in and contribute to the classroom of an art teacher here in our community. All of it helps the arts thrive in our community. Lane Arts Council might be one of those folks, but we know that there are plenty of other amazing organizations doing work, so choose one that matters to you. Okay. That's my spiel. It's not about me. It's all about you, Lauren. So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your journey into arts education.
Sure. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was lucky enough to have art as a part of my public education since I was in kindergarten. And before then, I was always very drawn to art, to drawing, to painting. And I always tell my students that I've been, well, it changes, of course, but I always tell my students that I've been an artist since I was 4, and I've been an artist since I was for 35 years. And so then they start to do the, you're 39. So yeah, and then arts education, I didn't think I would be an art teacher. I really didn't. I've always worked with education. I've been in the field of education now for over 20 years. I've worked since I was 18 in after-school programs, in job coaching programs, mentoring programs, arts education. Andrea! Arts education programs. And I worked at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art as their studio coordinator, after school programs, summer programs, all the programs. So I've done education for a very long time, but never as a public arts educator until 4 years ago. So when I was you, Eric, I was in my office and I was like, I don't want to be in this office anymore. Like, why am I writing all the contracts for the people to go get to do the things? I don't want to write the contract. I want to do the things, right? And so I went back to get my master's in arts education so I could teach full-time in the public school system. And guess what happened? I had 1 year of teaching. And I hated sitting in an office. And so that was great. And then about halfway through my second year of teaching, guess what I got to do again?
Sit in an office and be on a video. No.
Yeah. So it's been a very interesting journey. Although there were days that I really enjoyed the online platform for my students. And I think that having art as a part of that was really helpful to them because it was such a difficult time. But I'm definitely glad, masks and all, really happy to be back in the classroom. So that was my long journey to how I arrived here today. Yeah.
Well, it's so amazing because I know for me, like I was an intern for Lauren back in the day when I was in my grad program at UO. And I remember you kind of having this draw of like so excited to have like this, all of the things that were happening as a result of the work you're doing, but also being so far from the actual action.
Yeah.
And you kind of gave me the heads up when I moved into the position. You're like, you're going to sometimes have those moments where you're going to be like, I know cool things are happening. I just wish I was there. And you're right, it takes like the special type of people who want to be in the classroom and the people
Yeah,
who want to be behind the scenes.
that's for
And
sure.
it takes both of them to happen. And you worked in all those iterations, and it's been pretty consistent that arts education has been a core part of the work you've done. So why do you think art is so important for every student to learn?
I mean, I think art just connect, and I always do capital A art, right? So theater, music, any type of creative endeavor. I teach the visual arts, of course, here, but I think it connects us to our humanity in a way that, of course, most subjects that students are learning in school do that, but it has like this connection to our humanity and then their own unique self-expression within that, which I
Mhm.
think is so important. I mean, I know it's important for them because I see them every day and I see how much they need that space to have um, the place to do that, to be encouraged to do that, to see how others do that. So yeah, I mean, it's crucial. It's life.
Yeah.
What is life without it? So, I think that it's super important that it is a part of our public school education system. But like Eric mentioned, working with all of these organizations that provide that and supplement that for our schools are equally as important. So, it's crucial for their day. They need it. They need that outlet. And I love getting to be the one that gets to teach it.
Yeah. I love what you're saying in there that I think sometimes people confuse art as a part of the curriculum just for the sake of teaching art skills, like the craft of drawing or
Yeah.
the skill of acting. And while that's true, those are great, those are important skills for students to be able to learn,
Yeah.
especially those who really thrive in those particular skill sets. But you're talking about all these other pieces that come with arts education that is so much more than just the final product. It's the process. It's the student feeling, finding their voice, feeling their confidence, processing their experiences, that becomes a really essential part that's hard to teach in other subjects explicitly in the same way that it comes up in art without, no matter how hard you try to, you can't avoid it. It's a part
Yeah.
of the artistic process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really love hearing that. Any like additional thoughts on kind of like those layers of benefit?
I mean, I never want to take that away from my colleagues either because they work really hard at making their subjects, uh, to connect with their students. So I always like hesitate to say that sometimes because I know that my colleagues that are teaching in language arts and social studies and I mean everything, they work so hard to make their work relatable to their students and give their students that way to um, connect with the subject and
Mhm.
themselves. But I just feel like art is sort of uniquely poised to do that in a way that isn't quite possible all the time. The other biggest thing for me that I get to enjoy, and it's different depending on where you teach, but I get to create my curriculum. So I
Mhm.
don't have a set, I mean, I have standards that I use to guide what I teach, but I don't have sort of a handbook or a curriculum guide that I need to follow and innovate from, which is sometimes challenging because you keep having to come up with new things, but
Mhm.
that's also sort of the beauty of it. So I do feel really fortunate in that. I don't always feel fortunate when you're trying to get 120 like 14-year-olds to clean.
That is a really important skill that is very deeply learned in art classes,
Yes.
especially visual arts classes, very
Yes.
quickly.
When my colleagues are like, you know what? You get to teach the fun class that they want to be in. I'm like, do you want to teach them how to clean up after clay every day, 7 times in a row? I don't think that
Not
you
to mention
want to
all the
do that.
kneading of the clay that needs to be done before the students even enter into the classroom. You got to be whipped.
Exactly. So, yeah, no. It's everyone has their place. So,
That's, that's
but
right.
yeah, it's not all glamorous
Yeah, I
down
really love
here.
what you were saying there about like the different ways that teachers really engage students. I think that's so important to respect and appreciate because
Yeah,
teachers are so hard to make this a
yeah,
meaningful experience
absolutely.
for your students. You're
And
so
we've been doing some fun things this year, actually, where I've gotten some time in the middle of the day to collaborate with my colleagues. So we've been doing art and creative writing kind of hybrids. We've done some art
Ooh.
with our digital citizenship class. I work with our life skills students every Wednesday. They were just here, and that was fabulous. We've been doing arts related projects with our social and emotional learning curriculum. So that's been a really fun thing too, to get to work with my colleagues directly to integrate art into the day. So the students get more time in the studio. So that's been really fun too.
I love it. I love it. That's so special to kind of have that connection across the school, and there's this collaboration that's possible. Well, let's look at some of your students' art. So you've selected some pieces to share with us.
Here we go.
I'll pull them up, and please kind of walk us through kind of what we're seeing.
This kid, oh my gosh, I love this one so much. It's a pretty large work, this one. So this kid, when I met him he doesn't really talk a whole lot. And he does not want you to call on him in class. Like, please do not say my name. And last year when I was working with him, he would only draw this dog over and over again in his sketchbook, this little cute dog. And this project, I had them start with one of those sort of like free-flowing sort of minds mapping kind of exercises, kind of like a mindfulness exercise practice. And then we have something called Open Studio, which I can talk about a little bit later, where the students get to decide what they do. So this kid, this piece is probably 24 by 36. It's pretty large drawing. And he worked on this piece every day from the start of the semester. He finished the very last day of the semester. And unless we were doing something that I had them do, or clay or a demo or something like that, this kid worked on it, and he would keep it in his portfolio, and he would just inch out like the strip that he was working on. He didn't want anybody to look at it, right? And so he would just inch it out as he was like going through and adding more. And I am so excited because he agreed to have this in an upcoming student art show in Florence. So it'll be on display at the Florence Event Center in March. So this is definitely a proud teacher moment and a victory for this kiddo that doesn't want to be seen in some ways, but probably did my personal most favorite piece of the whole semester. Yeah.
Well, the time awesome that is spent on that, I think that's like the persistence that he had with this, the continuation of vision of bringing this piece to life bit by bit. It reminds me of, I was just talking to somebody about this earlier, like Yayoi Kusuma, who does a lot of these very methodical, very repetitive kind of things. I can see kind of that kind of methodology in there, which is so helpful. Like, that's a great like mental, emotional well-being practice.
I mean, this is a meditative piece, right? Whether he was meditating or not, like, it seemed, I mean, he could put himself into it and not worry what was going on around him, I think. I mean, that's the impression that I got. I'm not sure that that's what was going on for him, but it felt like a safe place for him, this piece.
Very cool. What an awesome share. Let's check out the next one.
Yeah. So these are sort of a compilation of pieces that my students are working on. I might jump forward to the tab thing because it makes sense here.
Yeah, go for it.
So I started to teach in a different kind of teaching philosophy or teaching system. I'd been following some teachers on social media for a while that work with this concept of teaching for artistic behavior. And I've always taught a choice-based program. So the more choice that I could offer my students, for me, the better. But TAB is kind of like choice-based, but blown up. Like the students, there's a few philosophies for TAB. The child is the artist. The classroom is the child's studio. And artists practice, make work that is meaningful to them. Work with ambiguity, which is a big skill that I try to help my students with, and they struggle with the ambiguity. Artists reflect and they build community. And so I don't really assign projects anymore at all. And so when students come in, they're like, you don't tell me what to do? And I'm like, no. And some of them love that. And they take off and they fly with it, and they can keep themselves busy for 45 minutes. They're mad at me when they have to leave. And then other students really struggle with it because quite often in the way that we educate and in our systems, it is although, like I said before, my colleagues work so hard to keep everything interesting, engaging, and interactive, there's still content that they are required to get through. And so tab is a place where the kids do have to struggle with not being told what to do, but being held accountable to a creative process. So it's interesting. And this is my first year, I would say, trying to implement it to its core principles. And you can see that in my students' work. So we have like sort of a gallery walk or a gallery show every month to 6 weeks, and the students get to show what they've worked on, the piece that they're most proud of. So all of these students were in the same classes at the same time, and you can see that their artwork is so vastly different. And that's what I really love about it, because I always tell them, I'm like, I'm not a 13-year-old middle schooler. How am I supposed to know what you want to make, right? But can I give you the skills, the materials, help you process and how to work in a studio? I can do that, right? But you need to interject what's important to you as an artist. So I think that you can really see like the variety of work that comes out of a tab studio, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then what I love about this too is that there is sometimes a perception too that arts education is about showing students how to paint a specific thing and then having them follow you step by step to the final product. And what you've got here is a complete and obvious break from that, right? That this is, every piece here was an original ideation to a final product. And that is like such a powerful skill to teach a student to say, you can come up with an idea in your head, and you can practice that skill set of putting it on paper or canvas or, you know, whatever other kind of surface, and then work towards that final product where you choose to say this is completed, right? That's such a, whether that's about art or that's about like any project in life, you know, that's everybody's work day. You know,
I know. I mean, that's what I try to tell them. I'm like, y'all, if you feel like you can't decide what to do in this room full of a million objects to create with, like, this is how your life will be most of the time. Somebody is not going to be there telling you exactly what to do and when. Or if you're going to go on and be creative and innovative, like, these are the skills that you're going to have to bring to a job or to a passion project or to, you know, a creative outlet. So, and we certainly do our fair share of like little skill builders and showing them how to use materials. And there's actually, you know, there's great things to be learned from step-by-step projects as well. But for me, this is what feels more natural to me to teach them for their artistry. So the Studio Habits of Mind, which I've worked with for a long time and you've worked with and we love, those are really the basis of the teaching for artistic behavior kind of process. So how do you teach them how to be artists versus what art to make? That's really what you're doing.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, Lauren. Well, let's check out the next one that you've got here as a sample.
Another one. Oh, mushrooms are a thing, y'all. Okay. Every 7th, 8th, 6th grader. I don't know. That's what it is. There's fads. This is this one.
The mushroom is the fad right now.
Yeah, and then this one, these are a couple of my 8th graders that I have gotten to work with since they were 6th graders, and so it's been really fun. The cool thing about being the electives teacher as well is that I get to see the students from when they start at middle school to when they leave and graduate onto the high school, and so it is pretty awesome to watch sort of their skills develop and build and just really take on their own work. So that's a really cool part about my particular job as well.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think mushrooms are a cultural thing, not just for young kids. That I'm actually a part of an artist group that is going to be planning to dress up like mushrooms. There's something in the ethers of our world right now.
I guess so. I mean, they're magical. So
well, let's check out the next one. I think we have at least a couple more.
Yeah. Oh, if this isn't like 2020, 2021, what is, right? Yeah. So this one I chose because I felt like it had sort of the emotion of this, what I'm seeing in my classroom. I mean, we have our days that feel very much like pre-pandemic days. And then we have our days that I'm like, you all, including me, forgot how to like exist in a group together. Right. So it's I think that, you see the power of arts education in this piece. And this student, knowing her and knowing her background and just speaking with her, actually super positive. She's always like, I'm happy, Miss Suveges. Why not choose to be happy? But she makes this, right? And so I think it just allows them to like explore complexity of themselves and their emotions. And yeah, this piece in particular, I was really drawn to.
Yeah, I love that because all of us, we're layered beings, right?
For
Like
sure.
I can be very, and no matter how old we are, no matter what circumstances that we're in, we can be one thing on the outside and have the conflicting feelings on the inside, and like they
Yeah.
can coexist together.
Yeah.
And to see the student who maybe has that kind of like optimistic mindset in the
Yeah.
classroom produce something like this, it honors that multiplicity of the person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's beautifully executed. I mean,
It's beautiful.
hand is stunning.
This was like week 1 and she was new to the district. I'm like, who are you, kids? Like, yeah, I was really impressed by her work.
Awesome. We'll start the next one.
This one I think I included because, again, just to kind of show the differences in what students are making. And again, these two pieces came from the same class. It's not like we did a watercolor class and then we did a figure drawing class and then we did a charcoal class. Like it's all, once we sort of open the centers of materials, they have access to whatever they want to work with. So a lot of experimenting goes on in a tab classroom. My students don't often want to take their work with them. And I have a hard time letting go of that. I'm like, please just take it. And there's a variety of reasons why they don't want to take it with them. But I guess the process is really the biggest part of tab, which is why I've switched over to it and I'm trying to embrace it. Before we would spend a week or 2 weeks or something longer on a project and then they would just put it in the recycling. And I'd be like, why are you doing that? Take it home with you, right?
Yeah.
And so now they feel a little more freer to just experiment and explore. And that's a really important thing that I can give to them, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's really relatable as artists. I know that, both of us have practiced forms of visual art. And I know for me, there are pieces that are just there, right? They're scrap and they're experiments and they're kind of I'll just leave it in this pile and maybe someday I'll cut it up and do something else with it. But also there's pieces that I've literally, also pitched in the recycling. And so to kind of even have that be a part of the artistic practice of allowing drafts that don't have to be final product for showcase. That takes a lot of pressure off of the art.
Yes, and it's hard to let go of that, especially in this kind of system. There's a pressure to have a beginning, a middle, an end. They have a deadline. They need to stick with it. They need to learn responsibility. They need to receive a grade. There's a lot of pressure in the public education system to function that way. And so I have a hard time sort of letting go, but I do have the freedom to do that. And so I do try to push back on that because yes, exactly what you're saying. When you're working as an artist, how many pieces have you started that you didn't finish, but you did something in it that led you to your next piece? And that's as valuable as finishing everything, right? And so I think the beauty of this process is teaching them that it is okay to experiment, explore, and move on and try something new.
Yeah.
It's more realistic to an artist's practice. I mean, of course, everybody works differently and you have jobs and deadlines and all of those things that you do need to do as an artist. But most artists are not starting, working, finishing, turning in. That's not how we mostly work. So I think it's a more true to the artistic process.
Yeah. And it's true to the work process too, right? It's not like every single time I open an email or I start working on a project outline that I immediately start writing and then I finish with a project outline.
Right.
Sometimes it's first draft, second draft, third draft, then for review, come back, fifth draft,
the phone rings, you have a meeting, you have to go here, you have to go here. I mean, I think it's just more akin to how life works.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's see. I think this might be our last one for the student.
Yeah. Another super special artist. And again, just showing the variety of work that comes from the same class. So we go from more realistic, working on their drawing skills, to working on their painting skills, to super abstract, and it's all happening in the same room at the same time. Oh, hi, Angela, my Florence buddy.
Ah, I love it. Well, she had a really cool comment come in, and I'll take the video down so we can maybe respond to this a little bit. So Angela
Yeah.
mentioned that she didn't know about tab, and she loves the freedom it must allow and engage with ambiguity. It sounds so great. Any kind of thoughts that you want to respond with that?
Yeah. Angela, hi. She works with me out here in Siuslaw School District. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, I think ambiguity is the biggest thing. And implementing tab for the first time this year, I'm having a hard time making the students sit with that, right? And so they want my help, and they want an answer, and they want an assignment. And part of the best way of helping them is sometimes not giving them those things. And so I have a lot of places where they can get inspiration in the room, have access to materials, ideas, etc. But a lot of them kind of freeze in that moment. And but I think it's helpful to support them through that moment, but not tell them what to do. And so that has been it's definitely a hard thing for me to do too. I'm trying to figure out how to do it, trying different, strategies with different kids. But it's something that I just really truly believe they need to know. And I feel like most other classrooms cannot offer that in a way that an artistic studio can. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Also, thank you for the thoughts, Angela, and for prompting that little reflection. For anyone else who's watching, please feel free to continue dropping comments, thoughts, and questions in the chat or in the comment section, and we'll pull those in as we're able to. So, Lauren, I want to pull us forward to kind of a question that we have kind of in thinking about specifically this year, these past couple of years that have been such a shift for everyone in the entire world. But specifically in classrooms, there's been a lot of focus on students and how this has impacted both teachers and students in the classroom. So what needs have you seen come up in the classroom these past 2 years, and how have you used art in response to those?
Yeah, like I said a little earlier, I mean, there are those days where it's pretty obvious we've all forgotten how to kind of coexist with each other. And it's definitely my hardest year of teaching, although only 1.5 of my truest public school teaching years has been, normal. And these were things that my students struggled with and needed support on pre-pandemic. So I think that the pandemic has mostly exacerbated situations and brought a lot of light to situations that were very much present before. So, working with large groups of students in the same room at the same time is very challenging. Like you're trying to respond to so many different people's needs, learning styles, behaviors that don't always come out the way that you want them to. And that there's something rooted in that behavior, but it's hard to respond to it in the moment when there's 22 other behaviors or 4 or 30 or 40, depending on where you teach. I mean, I feel lucky in our district, our class sizes feel manageable. But it's just those variety of needs that you're trying to respond to in the moment, plus teach, plus clean, plus, I mean, there's just so much going on. And yeah, I mean, our kids struggled through distance learning, and they are, I don't like to say behind, because what does that even mean? Like our way of measuring their progress, intellect, there's a lot to be done to improve the way that we support our students in that sense, but they are having a hard time. And so getting back into being together, it has been a difficult year for sure. I think it's especially important to have my choice-based art room right now, because I think students need that time. Like, if you had to do what a student had to do, I think if most of us teachers had to be in their position and do 8 different classes a day, 8, 8
Mhm.
classes. You sit down, a new person tells you what to do, a different system, a different strategy. You do that. You probably don't like the kid next to you. I mean, there's so much going on, and they do that
Yeah.
8 times a day. That's a lot to ask of somebody. So I think having the choice-based studio has been really good because I do feel like students, for the most part, feel it to be a time that they can kind of relax. I mean, I want to
Mhm.
offer them, I told them all last year, I'm like, this class is not meant to stress you out, right? Like this
Mhm.
is meant to help you manage your stress. So I'm trying to provide that in response to what's going on because it's been a year in
Yeah, yeah,
5 months. It's been
yeah.
a school year in this 5 months, I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that that's being felt in so many places, and especially in the
yeah,
schools. And what you were saying there about like 8 different classrooms with 8 different ways of learning and teaching and subjects and focuses and parts of your brain that are being activated.
yeah.
And then thinking about too, you're working at the middle school level, which there's a whole nother layer of like
Yes,
the transition that they're going
I
under in
know.
their bodies and their
Yeah,
emotional states and their social experiences. There's
yeah,
so much layers that are happening in their
yeah,
life at that time, and to have that the expectation is sit, listen, and just obey kind of thing
mhm,
is sometimes the perspective. Not like you said earlier, teachers are doing a lot of great work to keep
yeah,
students engaged in things, but sometimes that's kind of how it can feel when you're
yeah,
jumping between all these spaces
yeah.
and trying to make that transition.
Yeah, and there is a time that you need to just sit and listen.
We've all been there. Listen, I still need it sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's it's a difficult structure in the best of circumstances, and
Mhm.
so I think, I wish that we could do more to shift it so it responded more to students' needs, but it's hard to change something that big, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump over to another side of kind of the equation. So, kind of hearing about some of the struggles that are going on. What are some of those moments
Yeah.
where you felt especially proud as an educator?
I think, I try to see them every day,
Mhm.
all these like little moments where students will be like, my favorite thing is I'll hear a kid go, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I'm like, that you're in the perfect place then. This is the room that you're not supposed to know what you're doing. And they're like, what? You know? So I love those moments where they kind of see that there isn't like a right way to do something and that their sort of process through it is a valid way to be in this space. So I love kind of those little moments. My student that I showed you the very first piece, I just
Mhm.
like the fact that I was like, you want to put that in the art show, and so, and the fact that he agreed, those types of things. I'm so proud of them. When I hear them say like, oh, I didn't think I could do that, but I tried it this way. And then I tried this with that. And then this worked with this thing. And I'm like, yes, I mean, it's working.
Mhm.
It's really cool to see when what you hope is happening in your classroom is actually happening in your classroom.
Mhm.
Those are proud moments. And getting to see, I had a student show a bunch of her work at the Florence Regional Arts Alliance. That was my student a couple years ago. She has an Instagram and she sells her work. And, it's like really cool to just watch them grow up and become artists independent. And yeah, so all of those things are really proud moments for sure. Uh, they have some really great kiddos out here, and so I feel very lucky to get to teach most of them. No, I'm kidding. Not them all. I this year I decided to enlist and do a. These are the 6 things that will drive Miss Suveges bananas. If you do not want to drive Miss Suveges bananas, do not do these 6 things. And do you know what they do all day?
Those 6 things,
Those
of
6 things.
course.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
given them the exact equation, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, "This is how you do it." Yeah. No, they're doing we're getting into our groove.
Mhm.
Have our
Mhm.
cheese.
Well, I really love what you were saying there about students who came in and said, I don't know what I'm doing. You said you're in the right classroom then,
Yeah.
because so many times in the work that I've got to do with Lane Arts Council and going out and meeting with students and talking to them, being like, why do you like arts education? Their response is usually because it's the only class where I'm not wrong. And
Yeah.
like that feeling of there isn't a wrong way to do things. There is your way of doing things. There's ways to incorporate what you've learned into what you're doing.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you creating something is the right answer, right? And there's something really exciting in that. And of course, there's methodologies that I
Of
can
course,
hear that you've
yes.
built into it to ensure that students are being given clear skills that they can build and incorporate into their
Yeah.
expression. But if they express something, then the answer is yes. Like,
Yeah.
heck yeah, great job. You
Yeah,
know,
I always tell them,
and
like,
then,
I couldn't teach a subject that has a right answer. Although I did a lot of math support last year during our distance learning, and man, it felt good to get those math questions right. So I get I get the rush of the right answer,
yeah,
and it's cool to support students in that. But I don't think I could teach a right answer kind of a subject. It's just not in my nature.
yeah.
But what was I thinking? Something came to mind and then I lost it. But that's okay. We'll get there again.
We'll get back to
Mhm.
it. Yeah, it's so exciting to see kind of those spaces where students can really feel that sense of success, like from the get-go. And well, maybe working through some like difficulties of understanding what it means to work in that way, but then to
Yeah.
kind of end in this space of success is something that's often felt in a lot
Yeah.
of those spaces. Mm-hmm.
Well, we all need a little win every day. And so if I can provide that space for them to have that win for the day,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that carries with them when they're struggling through something like, algebra or pre-algebra, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to always pick on my math teacher friends, but um, yeah, they need those moments where they don't have to feel worried to have the wrong response.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to get in and learn a little bit more about your artistry in just a second. I have one more final question from your perspective as being a teacher right now. This is a very big question, so you may not have all the answers for this.
Yes.
We would need, I'm sure, a
Shall we
dissertation
schedule
to really
another
talk
live
about that.
stream? Yes.
Yeah, but in thinking about this, kind of the work that you've been doing, what do you wish others knew about arts education and or the state of education,
Yeah.
kind of in its current format?
Um,
I know it's a big question.
I guess I will just say that whatever you see that's going on in the news, in social media, in our world, all of that goes on in our room every day. So it's, the classroom is just such a perfect little microcosm of the larger world around us. And so these really big topics that are being polarized and fought about, and, you know, luckily in Oregon, we're not at legislative places with a lot of these things that are in legislature in other states. We are having those difficult conversations. We're trying to figure out how to navigate them, like for all of our students. So it's a really hard time to be a teacher right now. It's a hard time to be a teacher in rural Oregon. And I would say that it's important. Often the loudest voices get heard. And so if you feel that something is really important to you as a parent of your students that they are receiving in their schools, I just hope that your voice is as loud as it can be to make sure that those types of things happen. Educators can show up for our students. We can show up to school board meetings in support of things, but we are still sort of bound to teach in the way that our district is advising us to teach. School board members are really important. They make really important decisions that affect all of our kids. And so if you feel passionate about something, you need to be loud about it so that the schools and the districts and the board knows that there are multiple viewpoints on challenging subjects. And teachers are very much caught in sort of the crossfire of these major social issues. And so I am worried about the future of education, arts education in particular, where we deal with a lot of subject matter that may or may not seem controversial to people. So it's it's a really hard time to be an educator. I will say that. I feel a lot of pressure for sure. And so, you know, we show up here for the kids. We do it because we love it. It's also our job. And so it's a little, it's a lot right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you're saying there about the things that are happening in the community show themselves in the classroom.
Yeah.
And I think, I think about that a lot in the ways that we as adults process, engage, or discuss difficult topics is it's translating directly into the classroom in the way that relationships are formed and conversations happen there as well. And that I think we often think about like, yes, of course, adults are models for the students that are the young people who are watching them. But especially right now when there are so many things that are so contentious and so difficult, the more that we perpetuate the divide, it's not just divide between people who are voting of voting age. It's divide across our entire community, and that includes kids. And that's really hard to recognize that is something that starts to instigate itself, not beyond just the news cycle, but really into the classroom and everyday experience. And, people have felt that in workplaces and their community, on social media. We have all felt that, I think, that in these recent years, especially. And remembering that it's not only impacting us, that feeling of division. It's really everyone.
Yeah. And it's hard to facilitate those conversations, especially when that's not what you're doing that day, but here it is. It's a very skilled job that takes a lot of, it's a lot of nuance, this gig.
Yeah.
So it's a hard year. It really is.
Something else that I hear what you're saying in there that I think I've been thinking about, especially the past couple of years and in all my conversations with educators, is people sometimes think teachers are just a subject that you focus on, and that is not true. There are so many layers to the job description. You're supporting students who are experiencing a whole wide range of things. You're managing relationships. You're setting up a classroom of collaboration. You are navigating difficult conversations. You're thinking collectively as a holistic whole as a school of how do you create a culture and a climate. It's not just about the subject.
And then the secretary calls because little Susie Q needs to leave and go to the doctors, but you were on the other side, so you had to run to get to your phone. And then, it's
it's energy.
It's multitask. Don't be an educator.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for diving in there and sharing a little bit of your thoughts. And I know that this is, like I said, this is a really big question. And so that, there's layers to all of this. But I appreciate you kind of going there.
Of course.
Well, I want to shift over and hear a little bit more about you as an artist, because you are a practicing artist, and we have some samples of work here to share of work that you've created. So tell us a little bit about yourself as an artist and some of these art pieces that we might be
doing. I've been, like I tell my kiddos, made art since I was 4, which is, a long time now. I've gone in and out of having an artistic practice. I think folks watching that work full time, they know that it's so hard to maintain like a personal artistic practice and have the energy and the creativity after working all day, right? So I've gone in kind of waves. One of the great things about being a teacher, and I hear it all the time, but you get your summers off. Yeah. And it's awesome. It actually is great. Like I do feel like I actually get to kind of root in and work on my own work. So painting, which is one of these pieces, is something that I've done for a long time. I went for my undergrad for painting and visual arts. And so it's definitely a part and a piece of my life that I try to continue to cultivate. This year, I've had a few classes with the way that I have structured class where I actually get to work on my own work while I'm with my students. And so that's been a really great thing because I think it's important for them to see somebody working. And I also think it's important for me to be able to continue to work to be the best artist I can for them as an educator as well. So yeah, this is a big old flower painting. I love teaching students about symbolism, right? So what is the symbol of the types of flowers? Like, why do you make the choices that you do? This was a really fun one for me. And this was a piece that kind of brought me back into creating, when you sort of like lose it and you need something to kind of anchor onto to build out your next sort of series of work. This was definitely a launching painting for some other works I've been doing lately, which is fun.
Awesome. Tell me the type of materials that you use for your paintings often.
Primarily I work in acrylics now just because of, space and that sort of thing. I mostly did oils when I was in school. These are paint markers, so like the permanent ink markers to draw right onto the canvas, which was fun. I was traveling and house sitting a lot for a while, so I was taking those with me so I could kind of draw and paint no matter where I was at. Without kind of making a mess. And so painting, and then primarily, and then also, oh, thank you. And then also printmaking is my other greatest love.
Awesome. Well, let's move on and check out one of your other pieces.
Yeah.
So speaking of printmaking.
Yes. So, and then also the next one too. These are from a similar series. I get inspired by my students' materials. So I haven't been able to I haven't been, had access to a printmaking studio in a long time. So most of my work ends up being the types of materials that I use with my kids. So these are jelly plates. So the plate on the left, it's like it's called a jelly plate, and it's reusable. And so I got them to work with my students, and then I realized how much I loved the process of working with these plates, and it gives some sort of results of like an etching or a pressed piece. And then I've always been really into florals and nature art, so collecting things from my yard or my garden. Definitely has been like really inspirational to me, especially after moving out here to the coast. So yeah, I love kind of making, it's like making grown-up art from kid materials. That's my favorite thing to do. I do that mostly with my printmaking work.
I love it. So this is literally material that was bought for students, and then you started creating art with it. So this previous one is one that was made from jelly print.
Exactly. Yeah. So the jelly plate process is in the photo you just showed, and then this is one of the pieces from the jelly plate process. Yeah.
I love it. So if I'm looking at this one correctly, it looks like the jelly plate leaves these kind of voids that are left over based on the materials that you put on it.
Yeah.
And then this one kind of had those voids, but then did you fill those voids in?
Then I fill back in with paint and other things. So I definitely do mixed media and use multiple medias usually in most of my pieces. I love kind of nudging my students in that direction too. Well, they get to do what they want. I'm always like, don't you want to add something to that?
That's just me right now. Ideas of possibilities.
I'm always like, you don't have to take this suggestion, but if you want to, no, I'm teasing. But yeah, and then the cool thing about the jelly plate is you get always a print, right? You get sort of the positive and the negative image. So I will take off the pieces, right, that I've laid down and then print again. So it's, I love printmaking because I love texture in my work and color, and I love sort of the surprise element. And so these types of things kind of always offer some like beautiful surprises that I love to kind of riff off of and work off of as an artist. I'm not much of a planner when it comes to artists. I'm definitely a feeler, right? So what feels like it will go well here. We were talking about that today in class, actually. Like, do you sketch? Do you plan? Do you have all these different options? Or do you kind of just let it kind of take you where it takes you? So that's definitely my process.
Yeah, I'm very similar in all of my watercolor. I've never gone in with a clear plan. I just know I'm going to start with a circle and then see what happens from there.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's like a meditation process.
Yeah, it's like that's your flow moment, right? When there's those times that you just really get into that feeling, and it's, kind of what you chase after sometimes.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's check out, I know we have another piece here from you. This one.
Last one.
What a beautiful illustration.
I can't talk about my art without talking about my students. It's just not possible. So I've had this painting in the art studio for a couple of years, and it's been many different things. And I use it often as an example for my students where I tell them, I'm like, what do you think about that? And of course, like, oh, it's so good, Miss, whatever. And I'm like, they want an A or something. I don't know. No, that's when you put cats in your art. If you put a cat in your art, Miss Siuslaw just gives you an A. But I'll say I've been working on that painting for 8 years. And they'll be like, what? And I'm saying it has been many different things, but I have literally owned this canvas and I have been working on it for 8 years and it's not done yet. And I do that because it's true, because it isn't. I just kind of keep experimenting. You know, like you get that feeling when something's done, right? And this one has never quite felt done, but it's a great learning piece because they often think that you have to like do something you work on and it's done. And so showing them that I don't always love what I'm working on, even when they think it's good or finished, is important because they're struggling with their own work. And so I think giving them a real example of like, I like this, but I keep covering up that thing. So I didn't like how that worked, but now I did that. So I don't like it. So I have to do this again. And so just sort of verbalizing that like sort of process and struggle to them, I think is helpful. And this is one I also directly stole from my students. They started drawing onto their paintings with Sharpie and then white gel pen. Can't see it much in this one. And I was like, oh, I like that. So I give credit. I stole it straight from my kids.
I love that. So this lily here in the center is Sharpie drawn on top of it.
Yeah.
That's so fantastic. And what a special kind of explicit skill. Yeah. And I think that's another thing that the best, like some of my favorite teachers I've worked with have always been like, yes, I teach the students, but more specifically, they teach me. And to be able to have that as a part of kind of that philosophy is really exciting.
Yeah, I didn't send you a picture of it. I wish I would have now, but I've actually been working on a painting in the studio where I'll just walk around to the table and I'm like, okay, what do I do next? Right. And they'll sort of help me conceptualize like, oh, you should put this here. What if you put this in here? And then when you incorporate that and you honor it, like one, it's fun for me because I didn't know what to put there. And two, it's fun for them because they feel like they're sort of a part of it. And then they're watching your process, which I think is really important for them to see.
Yeah. And their opinion matters is what I hear.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It's explicitly coming up to them and being like, you have expertise to share for me as a professional artist to learn from. Like there is such a validity in their perspective that comes with that too.
Yeah.
Lauren, this has been such a fantastic conversation.
Thank you. It's been great to get to chat with you and brag on my kiddos and reflect on my career. I mean, there's a lot of days that you leave this job and you're like, what just happened today? Like you said, like, I'm like, I've said to my students a lot this year, like, did somebody teach me to hire me to teach art? Like, I thought that's why I was here. Does anybody know why I'm here? No, I'm just kidding. Not really. So it's fun to kind of talk about it because sometimes you do forget the amazing, inspirational, and wonderful moments that brought you to where you are when you're in the middle of it, right? So it's been really, really fun to chat with you.
I love it. Well, we have a mutual person that we both mutually love, Andrea De Palma, who's one of the teaching artists here at Lane Arts Council, worked with Lauren back the day when Lauren was here too. She said this was awesome. Thanks so much, both of you, for your expertise and perspective.
Oh, hello to Papa.
Yeah, hello, Papa. So anyway, this was just so wonderful, Lauren. Remind people, where can they find you and how can they follow you and how can they support you?
I put together a website last year. That's a collection of some of my art teaching resources. That's lolamakesart.com. And then if you like to follow my teacher Instagram account, I post my own work there. I post my students' work there. I share educational resources and folks that I love that have really been guiding lights to me in the education process this past couple of years. And that is at Lola_teaches_art. On Instagram.
Yay. And then for you as your classroom, is there ever times that there are ways that community can support you with kind of the things that you want to do?
Yes, we will take all of your money. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I mean, we're always accepting donations for supplies. If you have stuff that you're not, I mean, really, I love getting just supplies. If you have stuff that you're not using anymore, you thought you would be, the most amazing ceramic wheel throwing potter and it just didn't work out for you, right? We take all of those things. And if not, I get them to the right folks. Right now, volunteering is an option, but supporting through materials is really big. And just like I said before, if you believe in something that you want to see, make sure is happening at your schools, that our students are being treated equitably and supported, and having all of their needs met, then please be the louder voice at your local school board meeting.
Yay. Thank you so much, Lauren. It was such a wonderful time to be able to catch up with you and hear about all the amazing stuff that you and your students are doing, and specifically to hear your deep passion for this work and just how innovative you've been in your trajectory of working in arts education from behind the scenes all the way to right there in the classroom. So thanks for your work. You're an awe-inspiring individual.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back again probably next month with a live stream happy hour. We've decreased how frequently we're doing them, but be on the lookout. They'll keep getting scheduled, and we'll be bringing more artists and art perspectives to this platform for you to learn about. We'll see you again very soon. Adieu.